Welcome to Drop the Story. Today, I have on the show Devin Fredericksen.
Thanks,
Devin,
brother.
thanks so much for being here.
Such a gift to be here. I'm super excited.
Devin Fredericksen is an emerging expert in the four fields of self-mastery, relationship alchemy, holistic cooking, and men's work. His background in permaculture has driven him to develop resilient systems for all aspects of his life. Devin believes that by learning to lead ourselves, we can truly live our most vital and impactful lives. When I first had the idea for this podcast, you were one of the first people I wanted to have on the show almost a year ago.
Yeah.
And we didn't get to have that chance because the wildfire happened in Lahaina. Yeah. And, really put a stop on things. And all this attention just got diverted. And at the same time, we were, nearing completion of my second child's pregnancy. And yeah, it was time to go focus on family and go inward. So just setting that stage so that we can remember, when we plant those seeds of intention, it can take time for them to sprout.
Perfect timing right now.
Just want to share with the listeners everything that I appreciate about you, what I see you doing in the world. I got to know you a little bit through men's work and the circle that we're having here at my house, and just leaning into the fire and being real and honest and vulnerable with one another about what was in our lives and the challenges we're facing. And, at the time you were really just feeling the power of this relationship that you had entered, and so excited for you now that you're engaged to your fiance and how everything is moving for you in that way. And I know that you have this really amazing background in permaculture and in men's work and just leadership in general. So I really see you as someone who is doing very important work in the community. And I just want to honor you and appreciate you for that.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah. I just want to check in, as of right now, what's alive for you? How are you feeling? What's real?
When I tune in, I feel this fiery bubble, in a sense, in the middle of my chest, in my solar plexus, my heart. I feel really open, at ease in my body. I had a really powerful session with a client earlier today, and then on the way here to film this podcast, I got a message from a dear family member, and I just was very real with her, talking about leadership. I got to be the one to lead. I got to be the one who takes that edge, who looks at it and says, I'm going to jump. I don't know what's here. And I shared some things that maybe I might not always share, or in the past be like, oh, I'm going to work through this myself. And that feels really liberating to share that. And that's a whole other piece that we can touch on. And more than anything, I feel excited. I love being able to share about what lights me up. And more than anything, to have an impact to the listener, the person on the other side. And to remember that with all the technology, with everything that's going on, we're connecting as humans. And that, to me, is super exciting. Yeah. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, it feels good to not be doing this over Zoom.
So good.
I think most people are a bit zoomed out. But yeah, this is really a chance to not just put on a show for everyone, but to show actually how relaxed and how real we can be. So just setting that intention for this conversation, and yeah.
Here for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, that's how we show up in circle. We're not trying to be who's the most vulnerable? Who's the most, on edge? It's just, if you're happy, you're happy. If you're going through it, okay, own that too.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're catching me now on almost the flip side. Had we done this podcast at the beginning of the week or last Friday when we had intended to do it, I would have been a whole different state. I was almost I don't want to say a wreck, because I wasn't crashed at that point. I still was showing up, but I was in such a different place. And now the gratitude that I feel in this moment to be able to feel at ease in my body versus what I was experiencing a week ago, that contrast is such a gift and a blessing. And I don't invite it back in. And it's just a reminder for me and for all of us that when something intense is going on, to not run away from it. And I wanted to rush through it. I wanted to rip through it. I wanted to rip out the pain that was in my body and just be I'm done. But I know that even though that's like those parts are coming up, it was like an invitation for me to be like, oh, soften. Like, okay, I want to get this out. Let me go into it. Let me welcome it in more. Even though I can't hear what typically my body tunes and shares with me, how do I go there? And so I'm here to be real and share with these people, because that's, to me, there's nothing else. Like, what I'm most present to is what I'm going to speak about. So when I go to the store and someone asks me, they're like, how are you doing? I'm like, you really want to know? Because I'll tell you. But I don't think most people really want to know, even though they say that and they ask it. So
that's why I bring up men's work and circles of authenticity, just because, gosh, we need more of that, don't we? Like, and to hear that you were going through a hard time physically, you know, that reminds me that, like, it's okay for me to struggle too, because I'm with 2 kids. I'm not sleeping that much, you know. There's a lot of like weight on my shoulders sometimes to feel like I need to keep up and like, you know, match the pace of society when that is oftentimes just unrealistic.
just hearing you say that, I felt the flare up in my shoulder, because that's where it like became the most intense. When you said like the weight of society and like keeping up, I felt that in my shoulder. And then I remind myself, like, the next part is like tingling sensations, like the energy moving in my body so freely because I went through that. And I'm not even a father yet. So I bow to you, I honor you truly for being a father, because I'm personally ready. My fiance and I, we're not trying to go there yet, but my guess is that by the end of the year, we will have conceived. So I'm very excited for that. And just speaking to that pressure part, since we are speaking about men's work, what was happening for me, and I shared this with you, like, I got 2nd-degree burns on my hand. I got stabbed on the bottom of my foot by this metal stake. My neck and my right shoulder were getting so tight. Like, everything was happening on the right side of my body, and I kept tuning in. I didn't understand. But then eventually I got to connect to my shoulder and realize that I was putting so much pressure on myself behind purpose. Purpose was like what I was leading with, being like, all right, I got my purpose. I'm doing this. Like, I know where I'm going. But underneath that was such pressure. Underneath that was like, well, I wouldn't even say pressure. It was actually a fear that I felt I really looked at and dove into, the fear of abandonment. And so underneath the pressure, even deeper, first was the pressure of, okay, I got to provide. I got to make sure I give for our family. I was already creating extra pressure by looking into the future of like trying to have everything ready as if we had a family of 3 children already, versus like, wait, I'm right here. My fiance and I, we have our home, we have each other, our love, business is flourishing, more clients are coming in, more opportunities are coming in. I've got great community and people, brothers, sisters all around us. Why am I creating that pressure when it doesn't even need to be there? And when I went into it, I was like, oh wow, there is fear of abandonment. And I thought that I like went to the core of that seed and like uprooted it and put it in a pot and was like, I got you. Like, I'm going to turn you into a beautiful tree. But there was like, oh no, there's a little root. It's like those grasses that if they don't get taken out all the way and one root is stuck in the ground, they keep going. And I got to see that. And once I got to feel that underneath it, once I felt that pressure, then it gave way to even more pieces of how my joy and my desire and my love wants to be giving and offering itself. And that's really been alive for me over the last few days, is even people who are angry, people who are sad, people who are frustrated with the world, all of those things stem from love. And the reason why I say that is because for me, the pressure that I was putting on myself came from my love, my utmost love and desire to give to my partner. And underneath that fear was like, oh, well, if I don't do that, am I going to be provided for? Or am I going to be abandoned? And underneath that is love for being loved, love for being alive, love for belonging, and knowing that that comes from within. So it has been such an interesting journey to feel so much of this and feel the remnants of it, and then be like, oh, wow, thank you. Like, I do need this pressure sometimes. Like, I need to know how to carry the weight of responsibility. Like, you're a father. You've got 2 children that you are making sure like can come into this world, just like these plants. Like, when we tend to them and give them a beautiful, healthy soil and foundation, they'll grow and thrive in that vitality. So it's been a beautiful journey to feel all of this that's been going on, and hearing you say that pressure and like carrying the weight of society and all that reminded me so much of that piece.
The fear of abandonment. The fear of shame, the fear of guilt. Those are big ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie, when you have kids, it gets amplified. Because, you know, you're choosing to consciously conceive.
Yeah.
I did as well.
Mm-hmm.
With that choice comes an even greater level of responsibility to know that I'm doing it consciously. I'm doing it with intention. I'm doing it with purpose. When challenges arise, like getting 4 hours of sleep 3 nights in a row, like has been true for me, it's like, okay, like this is what I signed up for. Can I not just retreat from this experience, even though I'm having a hard time, you know, being at my best right now?
Yeah.
What I want to come back to is the idea of vitality, which you are such a voice for in the community, and what that does for people when they are in their vitality. Then when the bad days do happen, you're not sinking all the way to like this rock bottom. Like, you already have such a good foundation.
To me, vitality, and I've even looked up the definition, it literally means to give life. So to me, vitality is life force. Vitality is like, you can look at someone and you're like, wow, that person's alive. Not because of what they're doing, but because of what you see. Even though you like don't see everything, you're like, wow, they're healthy. They look like that. To me is a sign of vitality. So if I want to give life, I look at things, and you spoke about permaculture, right? How do I create resilient systems that give life? There's a lot of systems in the world right now that are not resiliently giving life. They're not supporting the thriving, optimal life force in each human. We look at our health system. I call it a sick care system. It's not really optimizing for vitality. They're just telling people, hey, take a pill, take this. They're not saying, go get connected to your local community, go to your farmer's market, get to know them, get to know how to like make your own foods. There's a book right there that says plant over processed. Like, there's so many things that recommend sickness and lack of health versus vitality. I'll call myself in and call other people forward within the coaching industry, and like the large scale coaching industry. A lot of that is just perpetuating lack of health versus helping people get to vitality. And that's what I tell every client. Hey, when you come and work with me, I don't want you to be my client. I want you to get to a point where you're like, hey, thank you, and keep going. So that way we get back to living life. Because to me, when I have vitality, I can live life. I can meet the challenges. When I'm a father, I can have the challenges of the child's not sleeping, and I can come in and gladly, maybe really tiredly and not so stokedly, but still with that foundation of like, hey, I'm going to relieve my fiance right now. I'm going to relieve the mother who birthed this child and give her a few hours of sleep and go be with the child. Maybe that means I go on a walk at 2 a.m. and that walks the child back to sleep. Maybe I go and lay with them, who knows? But when I have vitality, which is that life force, that like fervent vitality to live, or that fervent drive to live, I can then go show up and meet life. And to me, having vitality is not a bypass. It's not like have vitality and everything's going to solve your life. Not like go and get a strong body or you get a 6-pack and now everything's going to be better. Like, so what? What if you're doing that just for vanity and to be seen? Well, you're still going to be filling holes. To me, vitality is about living. And that's what I'm here for. I'm here to support people to live. Because to me, this is such a gift, and such a gift to be alive. And I know because I've had near-death experiences where I've been that close to not being here. And that's a reminder for me to be alive. That's a reminder for me to choose each day like, wow, okay, I'm actually here. Like you're talking about conscious conception. Do I do that each day? Do I wake up and say, wow, I'm actually alive? And like take a moment to feel it in my body. And then let that carry me throughout the day. Maybe I need to tune in 10 times in a day. Maybe I need to tune in once a day, depending on where I'm at. Maybe I'm not feeling so good. So I need to tune in and be like, okay, I'm still alive. We all ride through, there's all waves that we go through. I know you're a surfer. So in surfing, there's waves, right? There's a really nice wave and then there's not a nice wave. There's a nice wave, there's a wave that crashes and lifts us, pulls us back under. We may ride a nice wave, we might be having a great wave in life, but then we go back down. And then it comes back up and it goes back down. That wave just continues, it doesn't end. I haven't found an antidote to get out of life. A mentor of mine, she says it this way, that a lot of times people like to take themselves off the hook. And she asked me, and she asked all of us, like, what happens if you keep yourself on the hook? And that hook being life. Like, why are you trying to avoid responsibility in life? Versus like, what if you lean in? And when the wave crashes you under, do you relax? Because when you get pulled underwater, right? At least for me, when I freak out, it gets harder.
Absolutely.
But if I relax and be like, okay, wow, this is a wave, it pulled me under. I'm going to be down here for a while and I'm going to get back up. There might even be another wave when I get back up. So I have to be prepared to plan for that, but not freak out for it. And so to me, that's where vitality comes in. Vitality is that foundation that I can lean back into, that I can trust. And this will be the most succinct way that I know how to say it. When you train your body, when does that ever go bad on you?
If you train too hard.
But that's on the individual to learn, right? To know their boundaries. But where does training, if you're doing it in a way that's listening to yourself and you're listening to your heart, you're listening to your spirit, your soul, your mind, all those pieces, where does that lead one wrong in life? So if someone comes back to training their body, if someone comes back to training with their food, if someone comes back to training with their mind, with their heart, all of this, then whatever life brings my way, I'm building that capacity to meet life, to live life, to not let myself get drowned, and to celebrate this life, because truly it's a joy. Amidst all the challenge and the grief and the suffering and the despair and all the things that are happening in the world, to not let that get me down, but to continue to breathe and say, hey, life is pulsating inside me. How can I give back? How can I make sure whatever's happening, how do I be an example of vitality? How do I be an example of love? And to me, that's what I'm here for.
A lot of what you just spoke to, I recognize actually takes a commitment to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So it's this weird paradox of like, you want to take yourself off the hook, but that's actually not comfort. Like, yeah, it might be momentary, like relief from the pressure of life, but are you really developing a resilient system? Mm-hmm. Are you really developing something that will get you through challenges better?
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Mm-hmm. The reason why I use the body, because to me it's so tangible, right? When we talk spiritual, it's really hard to see spirit, even though everything we're seeing is spirit. Yeah. God, spirit, great spirit creator. With the body, it's such a tangible place to be like, wow, I lifted 20 pounds last week. This week it's 30, and that's easy, and I want more. Or wow, I was going from eating boxed, organic, sprouted crackers to making them at home, and I'm not adding all of these other extra things in them, and I'm not buying plastic and all this stuff. Like, we get to see those, like the tangible actions that happen. And to me, the best way I know how to explain this is because we're talking about like discomfort and taking oneself off the hook, right? That's like stepping away from accountability and responsibility and integrity. Mm-hmm. We're speaking to men's work, being a human in general, and freedom, right? Like the foundation creates freedom. Doesn't mean that just because I have this foundation that creates freedom, now this goes away. Yeah. I think a lot of people think like, oh, I want to be free, but that requires the utmost responsibility. And so rather than taking oneself off the hook, keeping ourselves on the hook, either way, there's discomfort.
Yeah.
So I always say, choose your hard. It's going to be hard sitting on the couch, eating chips, watching Netflix, smoking a vape. Not at first, but maybe the next day when you get up, or a week or a month or a year from there doing that, and you get up and you're like, oh God, I can't even like stand up. Why does it hurt to stand up? Versus I'm going and training, I'm running at the beach, I'm swimming, I'm working out in the forest with rocks and logs, or I go to the gym and I lift weights, I'm still going to hurt. So what do I want? Do I want to choose something that pushes me, that builds my vitality, that creates those resilient systems where I thrive in life? Or do I want to make choices that don't give me what I want and still hurt? I haven't found a way to get away from the hurt. And I don't even like to call it hurt. To me, it's sensation. And I think that we're so sensitive, and people don't want to admit it, specifically men. I think women are a lot more tapped into their sensitivity, and I don't think men want to admit that they're sensitive. And I was talking to my client about that this morning. He was explaining to me, and I don't know how deep you want to go into this, but because I work within the realms of vitality, life force, vitality, sexual energy, sexual mastery is related to all of that. He was talking about like the sensitivity of his genitalia is almost like this difficult challenge, but he's recognizing and acknowledging how sensitive he is. And I'm like, that's a guiding point. That's like an ability to tune into your body and listen to something. And so for us as men, if we can learn to be sensitive, meaning we get in touch with our senses, not like, oh God, I'm sensitive and I'm like this guy. No, do you know what it means to touch? Do you know what it means to smell, to hear, to see, to taste, to feel? Those are skills that help us in the battlefield of life. Because to me, sensitivity is actually connected to the warrior archetype. But a lot of times it's like the warrior is the mission. I got to do the drive, like tell me what to do and I'll go do it. I'm the initiator. But how do we actually follow through on the mission? What if someone says, hey, you have to go here and you have to do this and that's all they give us? How do we get there? We have to use our intuitive abilities to get there. And what if we're referencing war and like fighting? I have to be sensitive and have my intuition to feel if there's someone else around me. I have to sense. So that means I have to be able to be slow enough, present enough, calm enough to hear, to be sensitive. So it's this story that we've been given that our sensitivities are actually going to kill us. Because on the battlefield, if I give in to my emotions, it will kill us. So yes, there needs to be a line that we draw. And I saw a great video the other day. It was a dad and his son. They were boxing. And the dad hit the son and stung him a little bit in the face. But the dad just reminded him, he was like, hey, stay here with me, son. Stay here with me. And he wanted to cry. And he's like, hey, stay here with me. And there was a part of me that was like, do I want to let the child cry? Or maybe it's letting him know that life is going to hit you in the face. And there's a moment in time where you need to cry. And there's a moment in time where there's someone right in front of you, whether that's your purpose and you have a challenge, or my fiance, she's not fighting me. I don't need to hit her back. I need to stay present with pain and be like, oof, wow, hey, sweetheart, that actually really hurt if I'm actually going there and being vulnerable, like we were talking about being vulnerable and dropping the story. Like, I don't need to have any story. I get to like be here. And so all of that to say, like, how can you lean into discomfort more? Because there's so much gold. Don't take yourself off. Keep yourself on the hook and choose your hard.
And in the context of relationship and how you can actually also choose your hard in the face of conflict, in the face of upset, and be the one who is bravely moving towards the fire, in the sense of like, man, all I want to do is escape and run away and hide and make them wrong and just kind of like self-sabotage this whole thing. You can self-sabotage your own body. You can self-sabotage your relationships. There's so much that can go sideways in life.
Yeah.
How do we actually uphold an integrous container?
This is one of my favorite pieces because I work a lot within the realms of relationships. So a lot of times before I even go and address the relationship, I'm like, hey, let's start with you first. With either like individual clients or if they're in a relationship, I'm like, hey, you want to call in your queen? Well, are you even ready to honor her when she's there by honoring yourself first? So to keep vitality in a relationship, the first number one thing that I remind people of is, hey, how did you show up when you were dating this person, when you were really interested in that person? Because those things are probably some of the best things to continue to do throughout the relationship. because there's a curiosity. There's this openness of like, wow, this person's amazing. Who are they? Oh my God. But then a lot of people stop that. They get comfortable, right? They've taken themselves off the hook. They're like, oh, well, I got the relationship. She's here by my side. I'm going to kick my feet back. But it's so powerful because we need to maintain a relationship. A relationship is going to be what we make it. Because before that person ever came into your life, there was no relationship. It was you and that person. And now when you come together, it's you, that person, and your relationship. So now there's three things that are present, and both of you have to tend to the relationship. So that's the number one thing, in my opinion, that a lot of people get away from, is they're not the way they were when the relationship started. And I'm not saying you're the same person, but what were those actions? How were you internally? There was an openness, a curiosity of like, oh my God, I want you. So how do you keep that alive? Well, do all the things that you did. If you wanted to take them on a date, if you asked them what they liked, the simple, small things every day are going to build it. Because what I love to remind people about is the relationship is new every day. So everything that happened in the like, how long have you and Sophia been together?
10 years.
10 years. Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Today is different than all of the last 10 years. So you can call upon that. That's a foundation, right? So you have the foundation. But freedom is right here. You two have the freedom of this day to do whatever. And so in that, that's where, to me, living happens. Living is happening in the day-to-day, in the moment-to-moment, not necessarily in a session or in a podcast. Like, we're here to talk about everything that we do out there. And so that's number one. Carry the impactful actions and things that you did at the beginning of a relationship forward. Don't forget that. The second thing is remember that you're on a team together. So many people have seen examples of people yelling and screaming, I love you. People yelling and screaming and raising their voices because their needs aren't being met, because they're not tending to their own inner vitality first. So if you orient yourself that you're on the same team with that person, when something comes up, it's like, okay, great, we're going to solve this. I'm going to lean in. I'm going to open my heart. I'm going to listen to this person.
Because the goal is to win life.
Yeah.
Fighting with each other makes you lose.
And if you're on the same team, why, like, you want your team to win.
Yeah.
So you lose that. So I think that's such a big thing, is I think so many people continue to orient themselves away from each other. And that, I don't know how many people have seen this picture, but my imagination is a lot have, of the two babies that are reaching for each other, that image from Burning Man, where they're reaching for each other, but their backs and their adult selves are turned away from each other.
The inner children just want connection.
Just want connection. And I remind people this, and I'm sure you know this, you have two children, a baby will die without physical touch. And not enough physical touch, a child will die. So you and I still have our inner child sitting here right now. Anyone who's listening to this, no matter what your age, your inner child's still there. So if you tend to that inner child and remind it, hey, we're on a team with this person, like you said, we're here to win life together. So let's celebrate that there's a challenge. Let's celebrate that there's conflict. Because at least for me, I know that on the other side of conflict is connection. I know that in conflict is connection. And a mentor of mine shared with me what his mentor said. And I don't know if I'm going to get it exactly correct. But what I know is he said that we're born into relationship, we are wounded in relationship, and we heal in relationship. So we're not going to get away from each other. And the reason why, this is a great thing that I referenced, what I referenced earlier, when I had the conversation with a family member, to me, I'm like, why do we not practice with our family members? I was having a conversation with my mom yesterday, telling her, hey, this dear loved one who you're about to gather with, tell her your boundaries. Practice with her. This is the best person. Why would you not practice with someone that you love, someone that's your family, someone that's your sibling? Because if they're not happy with us, they may take some time, but my assumption and my guess is that eventually they'll open the door to us to come back. So if we practice that piece, and this maybe is a third one, if we actually practice being in love, which means speaking the hard things, which comes back to choosing your hard, because how many people don't speak the truth? And it's still hard.
Yeah.
So do you want to choose to not speak the truth and have it be hard and deal with all the fears and anxiety of like, are they figuring me out? How do I share this? Do I not share it? Like all of that pressure. Yeah. Or do I say, well, it's going to be really hard to say this, but let me do it with that love. Let me do it with that recognition of like, hey, Jared, I gotta reflect something to you about your relationship or how you're showing up. And I'm doing this because I love you, man. Like, are you willing to hear me? Setting that container up and letting you know by speaking that truth, it still is going to be hard. Yeah. Still to this day. I imagine you may experience it too. I've been practicing this path for the last 15 years. There's still times where it's hard and I don't want to tell my fiance, or I don't want to tell my dad, or I don't want to tell a potential business partner. But I'm like, actually, no, you know what? I'm not going to text them. I'm not even going to send a voice note. I'm going to call. And if I'm not going to call, I'm going to meet in person. So that way we can have that human interaction and connection to remind ourselves it's so much more worth it, because that like optimizes, that nourishes our vitality to then continue to lean in and continue to build and grow trust. Yeah. So those 3 examples of like practicing what you did at the beginning of your relationship, orient and be on the same team, and practice your hard with your loved ones. To me, I think those are just 3 simple practices to implement in one's relationship right now, no matter who you are, where you are. If your relationship's great, lean in even more. It's a better time to practice when it's going good rather than when it's bad. Don't try and practice this new technique. Don't practice this when things are hard. Practice it when things are good, because when it's hard, now that other person and you are gonna be going through it. So
I can back that sentiment up so strongly, because we usually look for the solution to something once we're already deep in it.
Yeah.
And gosh, like if you had just preemptively like done a little strength training with your love,
yeah,
you would have had some more tools to work with and potentially avoid the pitfall.
Mm-hmm.
So, everyone has their journey, but I know that when Sophia and I actually entered into a conscious relating, container workshop together,
mm-hmm.
we all of a sudden had this like shared language. We had this like terminology and new understanding of like, that's the thing that's been catching. I had this new way of like noticing when the triggers would arise and being like, okay, I have a choice right now. I can do what I've always done and perpetuate this cycle, or I can actually break it little by little and build trust that I am a reliable man who is willing to stand in the fire of transformation.
Yeah.
Because that's what a relationship is, let's face it. It is heat, in good ways and in really hard ways.
Totally.
So I could say the same thing about parenting. There are moments of just like unfathomable love and tenderness and joy. And, that's what most people see from the outside looking in. And I certainly did before I became a father. I had this romanticized view of what a power couple looked like, of what a conscious family looked like. And once you're actually in it, you're like, whoa, this is full on.
Yeah.
And, when you're faced with that much opportunity for growth, there is the tendency to want to take yourself off the hook. And how do you just lean in again and again,
Yep.
It's a practice.
Something that you said really reminded me of that point that I said, like orienting on the same team. Yeah. And part of that, and I find so many people, myself included, particularly more in the past, having a difficulty around someone communicating and expressing themselves, like my partner. So let's say Tatiana shares something with me and she's like, hey, what about this? What about that? And the little boy or the teenager inside of me is like, don't tell me what to do. Don't parent me. Don't be my mom, all these things. And I'm like, oh, wow, I have that orientation. I'm looking at you versus recognizing like, hey, thank you. I know you're communicating to me because you love me. You actually want the best for me. And I know it can be the same thing on the other side for women, hearing from men because of the stories of all the stuff around men and masculinity's toxic and all the issues. Like, so women also are like, don't tell me what to do. I need to be free. Don't like oppress me. Don't suppress me. But it's like both sides. If both sides can recognize that I'm communicating to Tatiana because I want the best for her. Sophia's communicating to you because she wants the best for you. I'm communicating to her because I want the best for her. You're communicating to Sophia. We're having a conversation with brothers. Like, if we can remember and like let that in, one, it's a fascinating journey to see what comes up. Because when she shares with me, like I ask her, like both of us have created a context of when we want to share something that may potentially be triggering or intense, we just create a space for it rather than having a conversation on the fly or whatever because our ability isn't present or whatever. When she communicates to me sometimes, the part that wants to respond, react, lash out, I'm like, oh wow, you're still there. That's hilarious, thanks. But I'm like, let me listen to like what she's actually saying. And then when like that settles, it's like, oh wow, there's so much truth there. Don't really resonate with that. And then we can move forward in the conversation. Like having that capacity, having that inner vitality to know, one, my body has the capacity to receive and sit with it. I know how to regulate my nervous system. And then I know how to stay connected because I'm not closing off. The ability to move through challenge and conflict, it's not challenge and conflict anymore. To me, it's like seen as opportunity. It's like strength training. It's like we're putting in the reps. As you said that, I'm like, oh, the love gym. Like we're putting in the reps at the love gym or the relationship dojo or whatever we want to call it, because we're actually depositing in a bank account or we're depositing in an estuary or an ecosystem of love that says, hey, you did something, well, we have the resilience to receive that and respond versus like you do something and the ecosystem dies and falls apart because both sides haven't deposited enough or nourished enough or regenerated enough that ecosystem of their love, that relationship that's separate to them. So yeah, when you were sharing that, that's just what came through so much is like reminding people who are listening to this as we're talking about relationships and vitality and like the connection, listen to each other because there's so much available because we see each other. I can't see myself. I like can see myself peripherally, but I'm not watching myself and what I'm doing. And Tatiana gives me the most potent reflections that can change my life like that. So
I just had this visual as you were sharing about the estuary or even like the garden and seeing it almost like, imagine your partner says to you like, hey, all the rainwater is just running off the hillside. It could totally be like nourishing our garden if we, created some diversions and catchments.
Some swales and catchments and berms and like plant.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm busy. Like, sure, maybe soon, whatever. And I just keep ignoring that comment over and over and over. And then all of a sudden there's a drought.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden the garden turns to just dust.
Yep.
It's like that doesn't happen overnight, of course. It happens slowly.
Yeah.
Especially in long-term committed relationship where like there's this message that wants to be received, but if the person isn't willing, it can just slowly turn to desert.
I was talking about that with multiple new clients, friends this week, this concept that, and I think I may have said it in here, it's in the day-to-day. It's in the moment-to-moment that living happens. And to me, life encapsulates birth and death. I don't see it as like a life and death situation. I see it as like life. When we die, we go somewhere else. We can't necessarily explain it or know where we go, but we continue on, whatever that may be. Yes. So in the process of life, we're either birthing or dying to whatever we're creating. So in that example, if I'm not listening to Tatiana tell me these things, and I'm so busy doing other things, not giving energy and nourishing and regenerating our relationship, it's in the day-to-day slowly that erodes. That connection, her trust in me, her willingness to open her heart to me, open her body to me, all of those things don't just happen like that. It's all the small things. And in the society that we're in that's so addicted to that dopamine hit that wants the big spiritual awakening versus the human maturing. And I talked about that with my client this morning. I was like, that hits so deep. I'm like, wow, so many people want the spiritual awakening, the aha. But then what happens when you go back to your life? All the retreats that people go to, all the sessions that people get, they then have to go back to their life and live the day to day. And that's where it happens. So either we're creating a flourishing, thriving, vibrant, lush, abundant ecosystem, or we're creating a desertification. We're creating a dry landscape that's not vibrant. on the tropical side of Maui. That's like, imagine trying to do that in a place where there's such an abundance of water. Like, it's on us. Right. We're so showered. If someone who's listening to this is like, it's really hard to believe that, I've tried. Open your heart and be willing to trust again. Because we are so abundant. There's so much available to us. And it's up to us to actually say, hey, I'm going to lean in. I'm going to take that step. I'm going to choose hard because of what I want to create. I'm not going to not choose hard and then have to choose hard. I'm going to put the reps in. I'm going to say yes towards what I want, what I desire. And then see what life gives you.
What do you want for your life?
Ease, grace, vitality. More specifically, I desire a nourishing, flourishing, abundant relationship with my fiancée, with Tatiana. I desire that same nourishing, flourishing, abundant community, to be on nourishing, flourishing, abundant land, and living life to the best of my capacity. Having a lot of impact in the world, mostly directly with people. And also recognizing that we can leave a legacy that is abundant. And I'm here for that.
Yeah, as I hear you talk about all this, I'm reminded of this phenomenon that is very present on Maui. I'm sure it's present in lots of different places, but this concept of the Peter Pan and the everlasting boy, and how so many of our men in our community are perpetuating these cycles of leaving women wanting more. And I'm really curious to hear your perspective on just this element of toxic masculinity, especially when it comes from a place of sort of like posturing as like this spiritual man with values and integrity, and then not acting in accordance with that.
What you said first hit me hard because I'm like, oh shit, there's me. When I wanted to propose to Tatiana, we had been together 5 months. There was no part of me that had like this process to understand, like, oh wow, I want to be with her. Like, I knew I wanted to be with her. I knew she was amazing. I knew what I wanted. But it happened on this day. I'd never had anything like this in my life happen, where I'm walking up to her, I'm shooting content, filming content, and the guy was like, hey, we need your partner with us. Like, you two are so great together. I've seen you, like, let's get a photo of you. I was like, sweet. I didn't know if she would be available. She joined us. We did the photo shoot, all that. I went to the bathroom and I came back. And as I'm walking back, everything blurred but her. She was crystal clear. It was like she was shining even brighter, like scenes that people see in movies. And as I'm walking up, it just hit me like, oh my God, I want to like devote myself to this woman. I want to like see if she wants to be with me and like choose me as her man, not me choose her. Like, I want to see if because to me, I think women choose the man personally. Like, we get to flaunt ourselves and do the dance or whatever. And then women are like, yes or no. They choose to open their legs or not. It's not us. Most men would be willing to go wherever, but it's the woman who chooses to welcome us in. So in that moment, I was so excited, so happy. And then maybe like an hour later, it hit me how much I was not in integrity, even though I had postured myself as a spiritual man, doing the work, devoted, I'm all here. I wasn't. And I cried for 3.5 hours, realizing, oh my God, the pain, watching myself act in past relationships, thinking that I was doing what I needed to do, but not doing it. There was still this subtle energetic of like, no, I'm not here all the way. If it gets too hard, too intense, I'm gone. Why am I going to be with this person? And I can tell, I know it's different now because I have not had that once. The entirety of my relation with Tatiana, it's been 3 years at this point. We just came up to 3 years last weekend. That thought has not come up once. So I know that there's a difference because I've actually said, hey, I'm here. So bringing this back to and I wanted to share that just for the men listening, because I thought I was doing it. I thought I actually was being that man who's like, hey, I'm devoted, I'm all in. But I didn't know that I was not that. So that's really interesting to like navigate and be like, hey, really check yourself as a man. Even if you think you are, really look at the patterns and see if you're avoiding yourself. If you're just saying it to like boost yourself up and get connection from this woman, get sexual satisfaction, like what's going on? So to apply it to your direct connection or direct question with the Peter Pan syndrome where men aren't wanting to live up and step into that next level of maturity, I think it's the spiritual awakening versus human maturity component. A lot of these men who claim to be spiritual, I think have had this awakening moment, whether that's through plant medicine or not. Amazing, great. But when you have to come back and live life, you've got to meet those parts of yourself that don't want to grow up, that don't want you to be the center of attention anymore. Because I imagine as a father, it's no longer just about you.
Not at all.
You had your relationship. You and Sophia had your relationship before the kids came. But now you have kids and like your relationship's still there and you have the children. So now you're tending to so much more. And now it may not just be on you two, and you two are just enjoying that love bubble and all those things. And Peter Pan, man, honeymoon not ending, I think it still comes back to the dopamine addiction that people have, where they want to feel such a rush inside, where they need to feel, but their sensitivity has been numbed down because of something else. And I can explain exactly with this, like with my shoulder. I know what that's like, to have something that's so intense that I can't sleep at night, that I can't move my head that high up. I couldn't go past that. I could barely go side to side. Like it was so debilitating. And I practice this. I'm a somatic trauma-informed coach. I work with the somatics, like all of these things. So if you're not capable of sitting with the waves, when those highs are there and when those lows are there, and stay rooted in love, I would say that someone's still rooted in that Peter Pan syndrome. The man is like a boy in an adult's body. The man wants to just feel alive. He wants to be flying in the air versus like, no, I got to take step for step and like build and invest in this relationship. And then all of a sudden you look back in a year, 5, 10 years from now, and you're like, oh my God, look at what we've built. Look at what we have.
Slow growth.
Slow growth. And so to me, that's what the Peter Pan is all about, is it's about graduation. It's about, you're not a boy anymore. Like your boy is alive. We talked about that earlier, our little child. Keep that little child alive. Keep that wonderment, that curiosity, that joy for life alive. And since we're talking about fatherhood, like that's needed for you to connect to your children, right? Like you need that. They need to see that in you. That's such a great example. And step up into that next level of being a man, being responsible, being of integrity. Integrity means whole. So look at don't look at it like in this huge metaphysical thing. Just look at like a container. Can a container hold water? If you cannot hold water, meaning abundance, connection, sexual pleasure, all those things, then maybe you have holes that are leaking. So find a way to plug those holes. Find a way to make sure you maybe you need to build a whole new boat and let go of that old boat that was given to you and because it's leaking. And so many guys, maybe also on this island of Maui, come here because there's such an allure of abundance and Maui and life and flourishing tropical island, all these things. But I think this island, especially with Maui, people forget Maui was a demigod, is a demigod, is a man, not Mama Maui. So people say, oh, Mama Maui. It's like, guys, you haven't even honored the place and the people and the culture of Oceania. Hawaiians, Kanaka, Maoli, Maori, the people from Fiji, Tonga, like there's stories of Maui all across the Pacific. Maui is a mischievous one. So I think Maui has this allure of like, oh my God, it's so beautiful here. But that also is a distraction. Same thing with the Peter Pan. It's a distraction from what's truly important. So to me, to get out of a Peter Pan, you have to be saying, okay, where are you going in life? Where is your purpose, your passion? Like, are you following those dreams? Or is it up on a pedestal that you're like, oh, well, that's so great, I'll get there. But you're not actually doing the work, putting in the reps to build that vision, that purpose. Yeah.
So I can speak just to the allurement of being so entranced by the ocean.
Yeah.
It calls to me every day. Mm-hmm. Many days I don't get to go play in her. And that like saddens me, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the elements of like, well, if I go to the beach, I'm already stoked. But
Yeah.
then if I have some ganja, I'm doubly stoked. And it's such like this intoxicating cycle of like, man, pleasure is available to me everywhere here. And I can just gorge myself in it.
Yeah.
And I did when I first moved here. But my life was not resilient. My life was not sustainable. I was barely making it. And it took a lot of hard work and dedication to break that cycle of like wanting perpetual freedom in the lack of responsibility sense.
Yeah.
There's another perpetual freedom, I believe, in discipline.
There's a lot of that on this island.
Yeah.
Cannabis is very much a feminine plant.
Yes.
Very sticky and gooey and like you touch it and it's all over you. I saw live cannabis plants 2 days ago, and I could smell the flowers on my face afterwards. The oils were sticking on me, and just that was like, I was like, no, okay, I have so many things on my plate right now. I'm not going to partake in cannabis right now. And I think what you're speaking to, because to me, I think the Peter Pan syndrome is very much equatable to, since we were talking about the warrior archetype, it's the lover. The Peter Pan is the addicted lover. The lover who wants to have all the food, who wants to have all the pleasures in life, who wants to have all the sex and all the cuddles, and is like, oh, well, I'll let go of that meeting. I'll just stay in bed a little bit longer. I'll go with you even though I have things to do and you asked me to come be with you. It's like, no, sweetheart, I love you. Can we schedule some time for later today? I'll block out the rest of my day after 5 o'clock and I'll be with you. Versus like, hey, it's 10 o'clock and I don't have anything on my schedule. You want to go hang out with me? It's like, no, babe, I love you. As much as I want to be with you, no. And the addicted lover doesn't know how to say no. He just says yes and yes and yes. And that's Peter Pan, who wants to just continuously fly away from being hooked to the ground, being here. And to me, there's such a gift. And as you were talking, it reminds me of resilient systems. And this is why I'm very selective. I don't talk about it, but I am a permaculture and regenerative agricultural consultant. I've started farms, I've consulted around the world. I love it. It's not something I advertise because I'm highly selective of who I work with. Because most people don't want to work with the way I've been trained. And the way I've been trained is don't do a single fucking thing for a year. How many people can move into a space and not touch the land for a year?
That's so hard.
That's hard. Maybe you tend to the land, but you don't do anything on the land. The amount of, I was hired to go do different projects in Mexico. I was hired to do projects in California, hired to do projects here. All of my clients, except for one, was willing to say, actually, after 3 months, no, we need to do this, and this is what you're doing. I hired you, you do this. I'm like, I'm no longer working here. Bless you. You can hire someone to do what you want to tell them to do, but you hired me to lead your project because you don't know how to do it. And I still don't know how to do it all the way, but I know from how I've been trained and the systems I've put in, I've watched what's happened and I've learned from people who are doing it. And so applying it to this, the Peter Pan, you want to graduate from being Peter Pan? Look at where you want your life to go 5 years from now. Look at where you want your life to go 10, 20 years from now. Commit to 5 years. Because in permaculture, we say that like in 5 years, we plan a system. In 5 years, it should be at a stage where we can really take our hands off and let it go. So what happens? How many people say, hey, join my 5-year program?
Doesn't happen.
No one is doing that. That's why I think universities and colleges, all that had that, because think about the time that people used to put in. And the reason why I'm saying that is because resilient systems take planning. It's not like, well, I'm going to plant a mango tree and a breadfruit ulu tree and a soursop and a jackfruit and a guava tree all right next to each other. It's like, no, I need to design it out. Like for me, I have to look at my life. I love chefing. I love my coaching practice. I love living life. I want to make sure I provide for my family. How do I make it not just sustainable, but regenerative? How do I make sure that I actually, because I wanted to potentially challenge you around like, how can you go to the beach more in a way that's nourishing the things that you do? So maybe you go to the beach and you take your son and you go to the beach and you have your son join in what dad's doing. Or because we get to build our lives. Talking about abundance, like we get to build our lives. And so for me, what's been coming through is talking about all the pressure, right? I'm like, oh wow, the resilient system that I need to build for this is my content days are days when I go out and I go freediving, or I go kayaking, or I go training, or I go to the forest, or I go on a bro adventure. Like that's when I get, and I'm like, all I need is 2 minutes. If I have 5 minutes of content in that time, that can be broken up into so much. And if I do that 5 times a week, or if I do that 3 times a week, let's say I have 3 times where I go out on an adventure, 3 times where I go to the beach, where I make sure whoever the person is, I guarantee whoever it is, whether you're a doctor, whether you're an accountant, whether you're a content creator, whether you're a coach, whether you work at a grocery store, you can find something if the beach lights you up, right? If there's that like enliveningness. Maybe that's for someone else going on a walk. But whatever that is, we can find a way to build that into our life that nourishes us. That's the regenerative nature that, like, if I plant a mango, I'm going to plant other trees that nourish the mango. Because eventually I know the mango is going to be too big and those little ones won't be there anymore. But I know that they are helping build. There's like accumulators and then there's abundance. So like the accumulators is like everything that's all the small steps that's building up to that 5-year vision. But how many people focus on the little steps versus they're just, I just want the mango. But like, how do we get there? And I feel like there's been this theme that we're weaving through, and it's so alive for me, talking about slow. I've been saying it. I lead a weekly class with this one men's group. I have my clients. I'm talking to Tatiana. We're talking about it, like, slow down. When we slow down, we actually have the capacity to speed up. Because I can see the necessary actions versus being drowned with like, I'm just gonna act. But like, what if that wasn't actually necessary? What if I needed to do these 3 things, but because I'm not slowing down and I'm getting caught up and I need to go and figure everything out, that I don't actually see what I need to do in front of me. It's like Tatiana talking to me saying, hey, can we spend some time together? No, I gotta do all these other things.
Yeah, amen, brother. I really appreciate the idea of slowing down and being able to listen deeply to what's needed in any moment, and to grant ourselves that permission to not run the rat race, because it's very alluring to join that and to think that that's the only route to success in this life.
That hurts so much, just even knowing that that's like what so many people think.
Yeah.
That hurts my heart.
It does. And I think that's why having examples of people who are showcasing what it really takes to go slow. Like, it's not a hare running the race, it's the turtle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in relationship and in taking care of our bodies and in, cultivating our skills so that we can become the leaders that this world needs.
Yeah.
All of it. It's like, take your time.
Yep.
Especially as projectors. We could really use that message, right?
Oh my God. When I slow down, everything is revealed.
Yeah.
I have my crown and my third eye defined. And I've been recognizing recently how much pressure comes up here. And so many people, they're like, wow, you're so grounded, you're so calm, you're so slow. And I'm like, sometimes if you would see what happens up here, and I don't even recognize it at times, and I've been learning it and recognize it even more. I'm like, oh my gosh, it happens so much. That's why I'm an advocate for the body, because it gets me grounded. It gets me here versus just, okay, next, do, and then all of a sudden I'm like, what just happened?
Totally.
But when I ground my body, I train my body, even though my energy may not be as high, and there's a story I have, I need the energy to be high to do things. Again, coming from a place of like, if I don't do, am I even on purpose, right? From that place of it being nourishing, from that place of it being like slow joy, not just like joy, but like deep, like felt joy, so much happens.
Yeah, brother. Well, thanks so much for everything that you've shared in this conversation and who you are in the world and what you're up to. Is there a way that if people wanted to work with you, they could find out more?
When I have these conversations, I really do my best to clear my mind. And the things that we talked about, the things and the places where we went, at the end of the day are reminders for me. So everyone who's listening, thank you for truly tuning in, because these places offer me the opportunity to show up. And I love to give, I love to show up. And in this, that's where I learn so much that I can then get to carry in my life. So thank you for listening to the call, creating this epic space for us to do this and to be in person and to connect, brother. And so with that, one of the easiest places to find me is on Instagram right now. That's kind of acting as my webpage. My webpage is under construction. So go to Instagram, my name, Devin Fredericksen. It should be in the show notes. Check me out there. And since we've been talking about it, you're talking about ways to work with me. I used to have a program called Sovereign and Shameless, which was a 12-week container. I know we were talking about like join my 5-year program. That's not yet. That'll be soon. But this is a 3 to 4 month container, depending on the guys. I'm going to see if the whole group has that capacity. But it used to be called Sovereign and Shameless. Now I've actually changed the name. Earlier this week, it came through for me. I need to call it Slow and Steady. So as we're talking about it, this is about slow and steady. This is about like foundational masculinity that happens as you live it. And so that's an upcoming program that's going to be started in about the next 3 weeks. So if you're listening to this and if anything in here was intriguing to you, I invite you to join the program. Reach out to me. We can set up a call. We can talk. I work with men. I work with women. I work with couples. The vitality of yourself, the vitality of your masculinity, the vitality of your relationship, of your finances. Like I address it in many different ways. I'm also a chef. So if you ever want me to chef, I truly know that I make amazing, delicious food. I've chefed for over 15 years all around the world. There's that. And yeah, if anything, if you also listen to this, rather than just if you want to work with me, I love to connect and I love to hear feedback. So if any of you want to give feedback, if any of you want to offer, please send me a message on Devin Fredericksen. I do my best to be available. I'll do my best to reach out to you, and maybe we'll be friends, or maybe you want to work with me, or maybe we just say, hey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Grow that circle.
Mm-hmm.
All right, brother. Until next time.
Until next time. Much
Thank
love,
you,
everyone.
everybody.
Aloha.
Aloha.